Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love. Bugsy's not here, and the reason why is I'd already been to the park and recorded this video twice this morning, but I got home, uploaded it, already both of them to see which one was better, and neither of them were very good. So I thought I'd come out and record it quickly again, and then I got to about 80% of the way through the third attempt, and then the memory stick ran out of memory. So fourth time lucky. Let's hope this one goes okay. The things I'll do for a like and a subscriber. Guys, please do me a favour, if you do like this content, hit the like button for me, hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Your like game is always incredible, and your subscribe game over the last 3 or 4 weeks has been magnificent. We're very close to 25k. Can't wait to see where we're taking this together as a society, as a community. I love you guys. Thank you for all your support along the way. On today's video, we've got a couple of transfer news, views and clues, things I've got to update you on. But I want you to hang around till the end, because after that, I want to sort of dab back into Ange Postecoglou's embargoed section of the press conference, where again, he clarifies his take on things. And you know what? I know the fan base is split, and I know that, as I mentioned before, 80% of people before the game, when I asked in a poll, wanted City to win. And so Ange is now kind of saying, I guess I misread what the priority is. But he just can't see it that way. What, Ange, having listened to your embargoed section, not that I was never ever against you anyway, but I think you absolutely nailed it. And I think that we need to sort of figure out as a fan base here, as a community, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody who feels differently. Again, all opinions are valid, and I understand the rivalry thing is important. But I do want to talk about kind of priorities in life. What is your priority as a fan? And does it change depending on where you're at in a certain process? But we'll get to that. Let's start with the transfer news, views and clues. And I've had to take my sheet out because the first name, guys, I hadn't even heard of. And I'm sorry I can't give you too much other than what I've read and what I've seen on the Y Scout tool. FB Refs does not even cover this player in terms of stats because he plays in the Swedish league. How disrespectful is that to Sweden? His name is Yuito Suzuki, plays for Bromby, 22 years old. He's got 20 GA this year in 30 games, 11 goals and 9 assists, playing as a striker or as a second striker /10. But of those 30 appearances, I think only 8 of them were starts. So in terms of the goal assists per 90, the minutes, quite incredible, like really, really strong. And I'll give you, just to let you know, according to Transfer Market, he's only valued at £1 million. But according to all the reports that are out there, there's half a dozen major teams that are sending scouts over. Liverpool, I think, are ahead of us in the pecking order, but Tottenham are there as well. Aston Villa, Wolves, Atalanta, a few teams in Central Europe. So it's likely he is going to go somewhere, and we'll see what happens. But he's 5'9". And I know a lot of you always wind me up telling me, why am I so focused on people's height? I'm not that focused on people's height. It's just that when Tottenham concede so many goals aerially and we don't score any goals aerially unless it's from Richalison, who's not always fit, then I do think that it's a consideration. It's not a concern, but I do think it's a consideration that the guy is another, shorty. In terms of the player himself, as I say, don't know too much about him, but from what I've seen, I hope this comes across as a compliment to the Japanese culture. But Japanese people generally are really creative, really artistic. Like, they love graffiti, they love anime, cartoons. They love making cool stuff out of neon. They're just break dancing, all that sort of stuff. If you think of anything that's really creative and artistic, and generally speaking, the Japanese people have kind of got involved in it because they love that sort of stuff. They're a very creative culture. I think this particular fella, Yuito Suzuki, has taken his creative natural instincts and he's turned it into football, because what I've seen from him in the video that I've seen is things that I haven't seen from other players. I don't know who to compare him to for your benefit here. I see him doing things with the way that he sort of deliberately leaves the ball almost behind him as he's running. so as to create almost like his own blockade before it gets through. I've seen him, and I'm not talking about like technical trickery stuff. I'm not talking about like Ronaldinho stuff. I'm just saying the way that he moves, the way that he manipulates the ball against the opposition is somewhat unique. I don't really feel like I've seen it before, but it works. Clearly it works at that level. But like I say, I just don't know what that level is. I don't know if we're comparing him to championship level defenders or League One or what it is. So, but look, interesting story. Apparently he's valued at 1 million by transfer market. Apparently, according to the reports, it's more like 25 to 30 for this guy from Brøndby. We'll see what happens, but in any event, it looks like Liverpool have prioritised this guy. Other story for the day, guys, is Morgan Gibbs-White. Once again, the name that keeps coming up. There's a few names that are just constantly on loop right now. Santiago Jimenez, Conor Gallagher, Morgan Gibbs-White, you know, to name a few others. But for me, Morgan Gibbs-White, according to the reports today, there's like Tottenham are head and shoulders above everybody else. If he's going to leave Nottingham Forest, it would likely be to Tottenham. That's where he apparently would want to come. That's where Tottenham would go if their first choice doesn't necessarily work out. I'm not sure if their first choice is Conor Gallagher, if they're comparing the two. And there are similarities in terms of personalities between Gallagher and Morgan Gibbs-White. Different sort of positions. Morgan Gibbs-White's certainly more of an out-and-out kind of forwardish player, although can certainly play as an advanced 8. Whereas Conor Gallagher is more of a utility, can kind of do anything in the midfield, but is not really a specialist in any area. Morgan Gibbs-White, I think he's got 5 goals this year and 10 assists. Really, you know, a decent return for a guy who's played for a team who's just about stayed up. What's interesting is the story saying that Nottingham Forest are going to be forced to liquidate because of their FFP issues. Now, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board on my research on the FFP stuff, because obviously Nottingham Forest got their punishment for breaching in last season's reporting period, but their excuse was that had they sold Brennan Johnson to Tottenham 2 weeks earlier than they did, then they would have been fine. But the fact that they sold Johnson in July rather than June meant it was in the next reporting period. So if that's the case, then surely you would expect them to not need to sell Morgan Gibbs-White for this reporting period, right? That's the logic I'm working with. But in any event, the journalists are saying Nottingham Forest have to sell. Gibbs-White is the obvious kind of jewel in the crown, because from an amortisation perspective and from a pure profit perspective, it makes the most sense to get their numbers correct. So it will be interesting. Let me know your thoughts on Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm a massive fan of Morgan Gibbs-White, I really am. But if we're spending £40 million on him, my question marks are, first of all, absent injuries to players like James Maddison, does he immediately come into the team, or are we spending a lion's share of the budget that we have, a big chunk of the budget, on a position that's going to be improving the squad and like a rotational thing, when there's other holes in the squad that need first team attention, like right now, like a left winger, like a striker, like a 6. But I am a big fan of him. But I'm a big fan of a lot of players that we've been linked with in that role. Danny Olmo, for example, is one we were linked with a little while ago. Love to see him come in. I'm not sure if the Gibbs-White thing is down to homegrown numbers. Maybe there's a rationale for that stuff as well. Anyway, we'll see what happens, but you can kind of get a vibe right now from all of the kind of main journalists who Tottenham's main targets are, can't you? You know, it feels like it's going to be Conor Gallagher. It feels like it's going to be Santiago Jimenez. It feels like it's going to be another forward of some sort, like an Eze. And, you know, all those names sound exciting to me. Do any of them make you go world class? Top tier? No. But as I've discussed on a previous video, when Tottenham need to bring in 6 or 7 players, you can't have the money with the rules as they are and the budgets as they are and the revenue that we have to bring in world-class players and also fill 6 or 7 positions. So what we need to do is get the building blocks in place to create a foundation to move into that next level, and then the next level, hopefully in a year or two's time, will then only require 1 or 2 additional pieces to the puzzle, and that's when you go and get your world-class players. That's how Arsenal did it with Arteta, and that's what we should be looking to do with Tottenham, and that requires patience in Ange and it requires Ange's philosophy to be embraced by everybody. And when I say everybody, and this is the point I want to come back to now, the final piece, I don't just mean the players, and I'm not just talking about tactics. He's talking about winning mentality. He always talks about mentality. How many times have I reminded you of the interview where he said the difference between the very best and the next level down technically isn't that big, but mentally, the resilience, the strength of mind, the will to win, the buy-in, the ability to get a knockback and go again, all of that stuff is where the real value is found. And that's what he looks for in his players. And I think that when he said what he said about Tottenham in that reaction, and he subsequently kind of backtracked it a little bit, that he misread the room around how important a priority rivals failing is, that to him, it just caught him off guard, that from people within the club to the fans, there were too many people who are more interested in others failing than our own success. Even if our own success in that moment was fairly insignificant, although I would argue, by the way, guys, that it wasn't. If we did win, Champions League money gets you closer to some of those players that you really want. But in any event, the priority of people within Tottenham and the fans, he's talking about the fans, we are one family here. The priority list is wrong. For me, and it's just me, I'm not speaking for everyone else, and I'm not criticising if you feel differently, but in order of ranking of what's important, you've got Tottenham winning every time, number one. Tottenham have to win. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care about Arsenal. I don't winning the league. I don't have any Arsenal friends, so I don't have to face the barrage of banter. Maybe to people that live in North London, maybe it's a little bit more of a sensitive topic because you're surrounded by people that are Arsenal fans alongside Tottenham fans. Maybe people that live overseas or live further away. Maybe there's less consequences in terms of that experience. So maybe that's why there's a different vibe on it. But for me personally, I don't care. I would never want Tottenham to lose because I care enough about another team failing. To me, it's a loser's mindset. It's also like a jealous mindset. It's a beta male mindset to kind of feel like, you know, I'm happy to not win as long as you don't win. I'm happy to fail in life as long as no one else succeeds. It feels like it's like I said yesterday, communism. It's like a communist mindset of, as long as no one else gets something I don't have, then I'm happy having nothing. And I feel like it's a weird one to me. He feels like it's a weird one to him, but like I said, 80% of the people in the polls that I asked wanted Manchester City, you know. Johnny said on the show yesterday or the day before, he didn't hear anybody cheering for City. Lots of people in the comments agreed with him. In their sections, they didn't hear anybody cheering for City, and so they're kind of insinuating that this notion that there was loads of Tottenham fans that wanted City to win isn't true. I don't know, there was loads of other people in the comments on that video that said that they were hearing it. And look, I'll be entirely honest, this is not a personal dig, but there's a channel out there, and you know, we don't get on, but I'm just going to use him as an example, not to criticise him, but he put a video out celebrating the win. So it matters to him. And then when he was criticised, I think there was about or so comments that were all criticising him. Most of them have since been deleted, but he then, as far as I'm aware, as far as I've been told, justified when people were suggesting that he's not a Tottenham fan because of that behaviour, he then showed pictures of him celebrating us not losing to Arsenal at the Emirates earlier on in the season, which I don't think is a very good demonstration of the point you're trying to make, because it kind of cements the point that other people are making, which is that rivalries are a big priority to you. And they're a big priority to a lot of people. Again, not a criticism, an observation, right? For me, I always want the rivals to lose, of course I do. But in terms of like, where does it sit on the ladder? For me, Tottenham always have to be number one. And when we are at the foundation of a new thing at Tottenham with Ange, and as I said yesterday and the day before, he won't be the guy that is here in 10 years. He might not be here in 2 years, but what I'm hoping his groundwork, his cornerstone, foundational, founding father role of a new movement, a new era at Tottenham will involve is not only a pivot towards a continuous and never shying away from a tactical philosophy to play forward, to move forward, back to the old days like we used to in the 80s and 70s, etc. His role is not just to put that back in as the foundation and the DNA of the football club, but it's also about putting in the mentality side of it, the intangible side of it, where you're not distracted by other people. You're not worried about other people's journeys. Focus on yourself. Focus on yourself. You know, running the marathon, if you set a target at 4 hours and you manage to do it in 3 hours 45, should you be delighted with the fact that you smashed your own target, or should you be upset with the fact that Gabri Selassie, or whatever his name was, did it in under an hour and 59 minutes, or however long it takes them? You know, stop worrying about other people's races. Worry about Tottenham. Prioritise Tottenham. Don't let rivalries supersede what's the bigger picture, which is how does Tottenham get better? How does Tottenham improve? And if anybody at the club is distracted by thinking, I'd rather lose this game than win, for me, it's a really sad mentality that comes from somewhere other than Daniel Levy, because people will blame Daniel Levy for that. They'll say this ethos, the loser's mentality is Daniel Levy. It all starts from the top, right? Buck stops at the top. For a lot of it, I agree. For a lot of the things that happen at Tottenham, the buck stops at the top, 100%. But I guarantee you Daniel Levy wasn't rooting for Manchester City in that game. I guarantee it. Maybe not because he wanted Tottenham to, or Arsenal, he cared about Arsenal, maybe more just because he wants the money from the Champions League. But if you wanted Manchester City to beat us, that's on you. That's your approach. That's your priority list. That's how you structure in your mind what's the most important thing as a Tottenham fan. You know? And I understand it from some people who make those videos, because ultimately they also, you know, part of their entire raison d'etre on YouTube is to get Daniel Levy out of the club, and that whole narrative only has any energy behind it when we lose. So there's a vested interest in Tottenham losing to those people, you know, which again is a crazy thing for me to have to say out loud, but you can't really shake that feeling that if Tottenham lose, certain people that are supposed to be Tottenham fans, I'll leave it there. Like, subscribe and comment. Bye-bye.